Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that arrived in Riku box number 2. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanaksanaho, my Finnish beer mule living in Oulu in the northwest of Finland. It's thanks to him that you guys are getting to enjoy a steady stream of Finnish reviews here on the channel. He's a lovely guy, extremely knowledgeable about his beers, and he's picked me out some absolute crackers to review here on the channel. There seems to be a very high standard of beer over in Finland these days, so it's really cool to be able to review these for you. But he's got his own beer mule network that he uses to get a hold of various different things from across the country, and then he uses that in turn to keep me supplied here on the channel. So it's great. It's a great setup that we've got going. But yeah, big thank you to Riku once again for making this review and all the other Finnish ones possible, and I hope that you guys watching over there are enjoying these Finnish reviews as well, because they're certainly quite nice to film, I'll have to say. But yeah, let's see about this beer itself then. So for this review, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. These guys do some very nice stuff in my experience, but the two beers that we've had from them thus far have been from the lighter end of the spectrum. So we're going to go to the dark side of things today. And as I've said in previous reviews, for me, to get a good impression of a brewery, I think you need to have something from the lighter end of the spectrum, something from the darker end of the spectrum, and then if at all possible, a lager beer. I think those are the three that give you a real insight into what a brewery is all about. So yeah, we're going to the dark side today. But for this review, we are going to go to a little place called Naantali, which is close to Turku in the southwest of Finland, and we're going to have a look at my third beer from Mallassepät, or the Malt Blacksmiths as they would be known in English. But this particular beer is called Sysi. It comes in at 9.5% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So yeah, I have to say, very curious about this one. My first beer from the dark side of the spectrum from these guys, and I think this is one that we actually got through Alco, if I remember rightly, because I had a little look at the names of some of the breweries that I'd had before when I was arranging the last box with Riku, and I saw there was an Imperial Stout from this brewery, and of course the two beers, or the beer that we'd had before that was the Hazy Ipa. So this brewery are mainly known for their hazy New England IPAs, and we've had two of those beers so far. We've had the Naantali, which was, I forget if that was a single IPA or a double IPA, but then we had the Sabro beer a few videos back actually. So yeah, this is the first one from the dark end of the spectrum. But at 9.5%, it's not the heaviest of Imperial Stouts that you're going to come across, and at this percentage it kind of makes me wonder a little bit, is this going to be more like a kind of old school sort of Russian Imperial Stout? So we'll find that out, I'm sure, when we open this one up. But definitely nice to have Mallassepät on the channel again for you, and hopefully this is another interesting beer and you guys enjoy my take on it. So yeah, again, thank you to Riku for making this review possible. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Mallassepät before, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Finnish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because we still have quite a few of the Riku beers to work our way through. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review, especially if you're watching in Finland, because there are breweries that even Riku hasn't heard of yet. We found one that you'll see reviewed in a few videos time, which we're quite curious about. But yeah, do get in touch and let me know some of those other beers and breweries and things that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Mallassepät then, on to my brewery notes. And I do apologise in advance for any bad Finnish pronunciations, but there have been a few Finnish people who've said that I pronounce the Finnish stuff quite nicely actually, but a little bit more sing-songy than Finnish people would actually do it. Must be my Swedish language influence in there. But yeah, Mallassepät are based in Naantali near Turku. in the southwest of Finland, and the company was founded back in 2017. Like most of these breweries, they are still fairly new, but the two men behind the company are Jaakko Hartama and Kim Kettunen. But Kim is the CEO of the company, and he comes from a background in IT, whereas Jaakko is the brewmaster, and he previously worked as an electrician. But the two had homebrewed for a number of years, Jaakko having started back in around 2010, and when they started the brewery, they were working their regular jobs full-time and doing the brewery part-time, but I think gradually they phased themselves more into the brewery side of things. But much of the original equipment that they were using was made by Jaakko himself, and the brewery released their first beers in 2018, and they also opened up their brewery shop that year. Remember, in Finland you can actually buy beers direct from the brewery, so this is one of the difficult things. From what Riku tells me, Alko doesn't have all that good a selection, and they don't seem to have as good pardon me, a system as we have here in Sweden with Systembolaget. So this is why he has his beer meal network with beers amongst him and his friends going all over the place in Finland, actually. So yeah, you can actually buy beers direct from the brewery in Finland, which is pretty cool. But the premises, this brewery's premises, it can be found in the Muriko industrial estate area in the city, and they're producing somewhere in the region of 65,000 litres of beer per year. As I've explained in other Finnish videos as well, it seems that the tax system for alcohol production is banded based on volume. So what you'll find is a lot of breweries get to certain volumes and then they stop there for a period of time, and then they expand later when the laws liberalise. 180,000 litres seems to be quite a common capacity for a number of Finnish breweries, but at least the Finns are being active in sort of liberalising the laws and helping these little companies grow, which is great. But yeah, as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 75 different kinds of beers. Seems to be quite a few different styles, and hopefully in the future we can try a West Coast IPA from them, maybe a black IPA as well, and hopefully a lager beer. But the name of this brewery, as I mentioned earlier, translates into English as the Malt Blacksmiths. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about these guys for the moment, other than that they are very well known for their New England hazies in Finland. But yeah, they do have quite a few other styles there as well, from what I can gather. But yeah, if you want to know more about Mallassepät, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's it for the moment. I would love to get some of these Finnish breweries in for like a Meet the Brewery segment here on the channel. So maybe when I do get across to Finland at some stage, hopefully in the fairly near future, we can do something like that and have a little look at it. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the history section and get on to the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, there is the Mallassepät brewery symbol on this one, and you can see the Sysi Imperial Stout. So Sysi means, like, black charcoal from what I understand, and it tells you a little bit about that on the side here. Like, it basically says, yeah, Sysi or black charcoal is it was talking about how it's like a blast furnace fuel that's made from wood, and you let it kind of oxidize in the air and stuff like this, and then it goes on to say something along the lines of, oh, this is a beer that can make even the darkest of hearts glow in winter and things like this. So yeah, I translated that a little bit early on. But one thing I would say to the owners of Mallassepät, would be quite cool if they could copy these little descriptions that they have into the Untappd pages, because makes it easier for kind of enthusiasts and things. But then again, it's useful for people like me outside of the country who are trying these reviews as well to know what they say. But I think Mallassepät are pretty much just a very small kind of local brewery, in a sense. If they're only producing 65,000 litres, their beer will go across Finland because it's in Alko and things. But yeah, it still would be quite cool if they put these little descriptions into the Untappd pages as well. But yeah, this one is a 330 milliliter bottle. I think it costs somewhere in the region of like €6. Remember, in Finland though, Finland is the most expensive country that uses the euro. So yeah, beer over there is a little bit more expensive, but they do earn more money over there. Like here in Sweden, they do earn quite a considerable amount of money in terms of wages and stuff like this. So yeah, relative to wages, it's not too too crazy actually, but I think this one was about €6 or so from the price list that that Riku gave me. But yeah, 330ml bottle, this one, plain white bottle cap, and like I said earlier, the Sysi Black Charcoal Imperial Stout at 9.5% ABV. So it says it's got a little bit of syrup in it as well, so we'll see how we get on with that. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. My third beer from Mallassepät, the Malt Blacksmiths. Oh, and you can smell some really nice stuff off that as soon as you open it up. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. This looks very, very nice. So there we are. I have to say, this was a beer that I was looking forward to when it arrived. Quite a heavy glass bottle that actually as well. So let me just line this up again so that my OCD is happy, and there we are. So, before the head disappears, you can see that this one is poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say quite rich beige head on that. It's got a lovely colour to it, actually. So, lovely kind of rich, light to medium beige head on this one. You can see that the head is very, very foamy, actually. And the beer itself is a lovely, dark, ebony rosewood colour. If you shine the light through this one, it's got a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, which I think is great. But yeah, lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But in terms of an Imperial Stout, there's nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of the appearance. Remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. Barrel aging and adjuncts can also play a role in here, but it's a little bit more unusual for Imperial Stouts for that to actually change the colour of them, to be honest. But a big Imperial Stout like this is going to undergo a wort boil of maybe 4 to 5 hours, something like this. So the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But the starting point is of course determined by what type of malts that you use in the first place. But yeah, that's it. Pardon me, nothing particularly surprising about this beer, as I say, when you consider that it is an Imperial Stout. So yeah, lovely big dark beast of a beer. So let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Very curious about this beer for sure. Yeah, it smells like a properly old school Imperial Stout, this one actually. Yeah, I think this is going to be quite a nice beer. Yeah, so straight away with this beer, you get a lovely blend. You just get this lovely roasty, toasty, but still quite smooth backbone to it. So straight away with this beer, you can smell that roasty, toasty, kind of bread crusty element in there. But you know, it actually has the sort of smoothness you might expect of, say, an oatmeal stout. You can definitely smell a nice big sort of smooth wholemeal bready character to this one, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, the aroma coming out of this one is very, very nice actually. So yeah, I think it's just the thing that's really striking me about this one. The first impression of it is that this is going to be quite a big, smooth Imperial Stout actually. It doesn't come across as madly bitter in the aroma. So yeah, I think it's this one could be, it might be one of these ones that comes in very smooth in the beginning, then it just bitters up a little bit later on. So we'll see how that translates to, that hypothesis translates when we actually taste the beer. But yeah, this one has another, it's got quite a complex aroma to it, this one, which is very, very nice. And as I always say, when it comes to craft beers and whiskies and sakes and things like that, half of the experience is in the aroma. So yeah. So the aroma of this beer then, as I say, you've got a nice little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fire bread crust backbone there. There's a lovely big, smooth oatmeal bready character coming out of this one, which is very, very nice. And that certainly works very well with this beer. So yeah, toasty, well-fired bread crust, a lovely big sort of brown bready, wholemeal bready kind of thing in there. It's almost a little bit like an oatmeal smoothness, but then on top of this you've got some kind of sweeter elements in there. There are one or two little woody undertones to the beer as well, so you could definitely pick out a little bit of woodiness, potentially even a little touch of nuttiness, but I'm more inclined to say woodiness than nuttiness. But there's some lovely chocolatey elements to this beer as well. You can smell a sort of big 60-70% cocoa chocolate in this one, so it's got a little bit of a milkier chocolate element to it, but at the same time you get some of these darker and more bitter chocolatey elements as well. So yeah, the aroma on that side of things is pretty nice as well. You do get one or two little licoricey elements in there as well. You get a little bit of that sort of aniseedy kind of thing. There's a wee bit of sweetness in there as well, mixing in with the kind of brown sugars and stuff in this beer. So yeah, like I say, there's a sort of smooth, there's a sort of nice kind of chocolatey note there. It's got a wee bit of a dryness to it, like a sort of powdery chocolate, like if you sniff the inside of a Nesquik can or whatever, that powder that you use to make the chocolate milk and stuff. So it's got a little bit of that in it. It has got a little bit of that in it, and then on top of that you get a wee bit of a kind of brown sugary note. So there is a wee touch of a treacly molasses sort of thing, you know, those highly caramelised brown sugars, but at the same time it's got a little bit of a toastiness and maybe a wee touch of biscuit as well, but definitely a little hint of a kind of licoricey note coming out of this one, which is quite interesting. The licorice sort of mixes in with the chocolate in a way. So I wonder if maybe the syrup is like a licorice syrup. It could be, because it certainly does have just a little touch of that kind of aniseedy type element to it. So that's quite interesting. But as I say, main impression of the malty side of this beer, it's a big smooth Imperial Stout, this one. So yeah, it does come across very nicely actually. On the hoppy side of things, there's a good little bit of earthiness coming out of it, which I do like. There's a little bit of a smooth, slightly herbally quality, but you've also got a wee touch of a floral aromaticity and a bit of grassiness. But remember, with a big Imperial Stout like this, it does say that this one is best before. It looks like actually, maybe this is it. On the side here it's got a date, which I suspect it maybe mean the 10th, the 10th 2020. So this one's maybe been bottled in October of 2020. Nothing wrong with that, of course, because an Imperial Stout will last. But yeah, this one, if that is the bottled on date, this beer will be about 18 months old, but you are still getting a little bit of the hoppy character out of it. You still get a little bit of floral note and a wee bit of a grassy quality to it. But remember, over time, these elements of the beer will drop out a little bit. So yeah, just bear that in mind with this beer. It does have a nice little green component to it though, which I can certainly appreciate. But on the fruity side of things, it's quite interesting too. You've got a little bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness to this one, which I like. There's a lovely, there's a wee bit of a raisiny sharpness to this one for sure. You do get a little bit of an almost brownie, like chocolate brownie note underneath the beer as well. Some kind of plummy elements, a little bit of lighter fig, and then I get quite a wee bit of a kind of, there's a wee bit of a kind of blackberry type sharpness out of this beer. So I do get quite a bit of raisin and quite a wee bit of a blackberry sharpness out of this one. So yeah, very smooth, slightly sharper fruits, then a nice little bit of the green component to the beer as well. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one, because this is quite nice actually. Very big smooth Imperial Stout, this one. So yeah, I have to say I'm quite curious to see what this beer has in store for us now. So I think it's about time that we have a taste of this one and see how we go. So yeah, this one is the Sysi, the black charcoal, coming in at 9.5% ABV, an Imperial Stout from Mallassepät in Naantali near Turku in the southwest of Finland. Thank you again to Riku for making this review possible. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, kiitos, and kipis. There we go. Yeah, that works out rather nicely actually. It does have a wee bit of a bitter edge to it, but it still has that smoothness. So yeah, first impression of this beer is the bitterness is a wee bit more than the aroma gives the impression of. But I like that with an Imperial Stout. I like an Imperial Stout to let you know, yeah, this is a big, dark, bitter beer. So yeah. But yeah, it does work actually. You do get a wee bit of the licorice out of this one as well, which is it's quite interesting. So the Swedes would love this this Imperial Stout for sure. So I think I do suspect a little bit that the syrup that they put in this one might be a bit of a very, they might have put just a little touch of a licorice or an aniseed syrup in this beer, because it sits there, it really does sit there towards the kind of front of that middle third of the palate. So yeah, it works very nicely, let's just say that. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer for you a little bit more. But nice little bit of a bitter kick to it, but yeah, lovely smoothness to the beer as well. So yeah. But yeah, on the backbone of the beer then, just to kind of go through this one and describe it a little bit better. So the backbone of the beer is that nice roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty element that just blankets the middle of your tongue. On top of that though, you've got what feels like a very smooth kind of wholemeal type bread. You've got that there. It doesn't feel quite as thick as oatmeal. Oatmeal stouts are lovely and very, very smooth, but yeah, it has a little bit of thickness to it. This beer is more just a kind of straight up brown wholemealy bread. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty backbone to the beer. There's a nice bit of a smooth brown bready element to it, like I say, and then yeah, on top of it, it's got a few layers of different things there. So yeah, on top of the kind of the brown bread elements, you start to get the chocolate. You get that. We're just talking about the middle third of your palate, remember, as well. So on top of that, you get that nice powdery chocolate, and the chocolate actually comes in maybe about an 80-90% cocoa. So it's one of the darker, more bitter chocolates to it, and it becomes a little bit more. Sort of bitter and toasty with time. As I say, you've got a nice roasty, toasty, well-fired backbone to this beer. But yeah, the chocolatey element, particularly on the back half of that middle third of your tongue, it's got a nice more kind of roasty 80-90% cocoa to it, and as you move further forward, you get a little bit more. You get a little bit more of a kind of sweeter, milkier chocolate out of this one too. So yeah, it does, at the back of that middle third of your palate, an 80-90% cocoa chocolate, and as you move further forward, it gradually becomes a little bit more milky and becomes like a sort of 40-50% cocoa chocolate. But in the middle of your palate though, you do get some of those nice brown sugars. I do get a wee bit of a treacly molasses sort of thing in the very centre of the tongue there, and as you move further out from that, it's got a little bit more of a toasty caramel, and maybe even out towards the extremities of the palate, it's a little bit more sort of biscuity. But as you move into the front half, of that, middle third of your tongue, it's got a nice, it has got a nice little bit of a kind of licoricey quality to it there. As I say, I suspect the syrup that's in this is a bit of a licorice or an aniseed syrup there, so that kind of licoricey note just lingers the further you go into the aftertaste. The other thing you're going to notice about this beer is that if you go to the front corners of your palate, then diagonally back, you will start to feel just a little touch of a kind of woody undertone pushing its way out of the beer on the front half of that middle third of your tongue. So that's definitely worth looking at as well. So yeah, that describes the kind of middle third of your palate. That's where the biggest complexities in this beer are, definitely. But yeah, on the you really, when you take this beer in, just when it kind of rolls out and you get the sweeter end of that initial impact, you really get the licorice out of the beer then. But anyway, on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, then you can feel a little bit of a bready build-up and a bit of a toasty, grainy bread crusty element in there. Then on that back third of your palate, you've got a nice roasty, toasty, well-fired backbone to the beer also. But sitting on top of that, that kind of well-fired bread crust element, you get a little touch of a kind of brown bread, but then you can feel the yeasty elements to the beer coming out. So the back third of your palate, the flavour feels a little bit taller and a little bit more sort of airy in a sense. So I can definitely appreciate how that side of things goes together in this one, absolutely. But yeah, as you move from the back of the palate and come forward, you can feel the flavour just condensing down a little bit. Then as you go into that middle third of your palate, it goes down, and then the flavours are quite nice and just condensed together in a sense. So always interesting to talk about the thickness of the flavour in these beers. But on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and then as you move towards the front corners of the palate, the earthiness and the herbal qualities actually do spread forward quite a wee bit. But then on the front corners of the palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing. Then around the front curve of the tongue, it's got a little bit of a lighter sort of grassy element too. So yeah, I do like how this how the green component goes together. You do get just a little tiny bit of zestiness and a wee bit of a floral note. So yeah, it works very well actually. So thumbs up to Mallassepät for the green component of this beer. So let's focus on the fruity side of things then to round off. So it actually has a nice kind of juicy and slightly wet fruity element to it. But yeah, how would you say, the border between the front third and the middle third of your palate there, you've got a nice bready build up again, wee bit of a toasty bread crust, and then the base of that front third of your palate, it's a nice kind of smooth bready element to it there, a little bit of a kind of bread crusty thing. At the back of that front third of your tongue, you get a wee bit of a you do get a little bit of a more kind of how would you say, you get a little bit more of a kind of brownie, cakey sort of build up to it, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, and sitting on top of that, of course, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So on top of the kind of brownie element there, you do get a wee bit of a raisin coming in, then underneath you get a little bit of a juicy plum, and as you move further forward, you'll feel the fruity side of the beer becomes a little bit more figgy, and then in the front half of that front third of your tongue, definitely a wee bit more of a kind of blackcurranty underlining, and a bit of a sort of more juicy blackberry sitting on top of it. So yeah, it's kind of typical fruity elements in this beer actually, but the thing that really overrides everything else with this beer is just the level of smoothness that you get out of it. It's got a bit of a roasty toasty bite to it, which you want from an Imperial Stout, at least in my opinion, but it has that kind of smoothness. That smoothness from the aroma really translates into the flavour with this one. But it does strike me as being a kind of more old school sort of Russian Imperial Stout, but it's at the bready side of the Russian Imperial Stout spectrum for me. But it's solid. It is very, very nice, and you've got just a little hint of that licorice flavour in there. So I do think there's a wee I think the syrup that's in this one might well be a little bit of a licorice syrup there, because that really just sits there on the front half of that middle third of your tongue. There is just a little bit of a licoricey, syrupy quality out of this beer. So yeah, that certainly works with this one. But yeah, I think that rounds off the flavour description of this beer quite nicely. Let's round off the review then with the mouthfeel. I would say it's definitely not the thickest of Imperial Stouts that you're going to come across. It's, I would say that this is kind of top end to mid-bodied, bottom end to full bodied, this one. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It does have a wee bit of slickness to it, but at the same time it's got a little bit of a kind of cleanliness. Also, I mean, with the Nordic beers, you always get this element of cleanliness to them just because of the quality of the water, and you can definitely get a bit of that out of this beer for sure. So it's like a really, that doesn't detract from the beer in any way. It's packed with flavour. But it does, the Nordic beers, they tend to feel quite clean and things like that. But compared to some of this Imperial Stout is not the thickest one you're going to come across from the Nordic countries, of course. Just bear that in mind. But that doesn't take away from anything the beer has. It's got a bit of cleanliness to it. It's a very, very smooth beer, and it's just got a little bit of that roasty, toasty component to it as well. But yeah, I like this one. I do like this one for sure. In terms of the IBU count of this beer, then, it's not madly high, but I think this one's got to be, the kind of 50, 60 IBU mark, something like that. I think maybe about 60 IBUs, but remember, IBU counts are one of my weaker points when it comes to to review in beer. So the hoppy bitter side of this beer isn't too much. There is a bit of bitterness from the earthy side of things, but the sort of black malty, the roasty bread crusty kind of element that you get with this one, which I suspect incidentally might be Special B, you do get a little bit of bitterness out of that. It reminds me to a degree of some of the beers that I've had from Nerd Brewing here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. So a bit of a roasty, toasty, malty backbone, very, very smooth, and there's a wee bit of sweetness comes out of it later. A little bit of hoppy bitterness as well. So big, smooth, malty notes, nice little bit of hoppy bitterness. I think maybe about 60 IBUs, something like that. You've got a nice little bit of sharpness from the fruit, a little bit of wetness and juiciness in there, but overall I think it works very, very nicely. So yeah, I think that's a good point to kind of round off this review. So yeah, once again, Riku, thank you for making this review possible. This has been a really interesting, more kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout, this one. We do have a couple more stouts actually to work our way through, and then we've got some more kind of malty leaning big boys that we'll take a look at also. So yeah, I think there's another 3 Imperial Stouts, and then we move on to the more kind of malty big boys. So keep your eyes peeled for those reviews over the next little while. I'm certainly looking forward to those, but this one was the Sysi Black Charcoal 9.5% Imperial Stout from Mallassepät in Naantali near Turku in the southwest of Finland. Really enjoyed reviewing this one. So yeah, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Mallassepät. Do give me some other brewery recommendations from Finland that Riku and I might not have heard of, because I know there's some very small and interesting things going on over there just now. So let me know about those in the comment section below. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Mallassepät, and I'll see you guys in the next review. This was a lovely kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout. Slanja, skål, cheers.